Diane Rothschild's manicured fingernail jabbed the doorbell with such force that it could have punctured titanium. Her designer sunglasses reflected the pristine suburban landscape of Willow Creek Estates, where every lawn was a canvas of emerald perfection and every resident knew their place, or so she believed. Chief Michael Rodriguez was trimming hedges in his front yard when the commotion began. From 50 feet away, he could see his wife Sarah's warning look. This wasn't going to be a typical Saturday morning. This is completely unacceptable. Diane's voice carried the practiced pitch of someone accustomed to getting her way. Her white linen pantsuit looked like it had been pressed by angels, a stark contrast to the sweat beading on Michael's forehead from yard work. She marched up to him, clipboard clutched like a weapon of bureaucratic warfare. The HOA bylaws clearly state that pool access is regulated by strict guidelines, and your pool does not meet the current standards. Michael raised an eyebrow. He'd heard this speech before, countless times in fact. As the local police chief and a long-standing resident of the neighborhood, he was intimately familiar with Diane Rothschild's particular brand of aggressive compliance. "Good morning, Diane," he said calmly, setting down his hedge trimmers. "Would you like to discuss this over coffee?" But Diane was not interested in coffee, or discussion, or anything resembling reasonable dialogue. "I'm calling the authorities," she declared, whipping out her smartphone with the dramatic flair of a daytime soap opera star. Sarah Rodriguez, watching from the front window, couldn't help but chuckle. If Diane only knew who she was about to call. The 911 dispatcher's voice came through clearly. 911, what's your emergency? "I need to report a severe violation of community pool regulations," Diane announced, her voice trembling with righteous indignation. There was a momentary pause. Then a familiar chuckle emerged from the phone's speaker. "Diane?" The dispatcher's voice was unmistakable. "It's Mark from dispatch. You do realize you're reporting a pool issue to 911, right?" Michael's suppressed laughter caught in his throat. Diane's face, previously a canvas of confident rage, now transformed into a palette of confusion and emerging mortification. But this was just the beginning. The pool incident was merely the first ripple in what would become a tsunami of neighborhood drama, a confrontation that would test the boundaries of community, power, and the unwritten rules of suburban warfare. As Diane stood there, phone in hand, Michael knew this was going to be a day to remember. The look in his wife's eyes told him everything. Buckle up, because Diane Rothschild was about to learn exactly who ran this neighborhood. And it wasn't going to be her. The hedge trimmers lay forgotten on the perfectly manicured lawn, a silent witness to the storm about to break loose in Willow Creek Estates. Diane Rothschild didn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat surrounded by a fortress of HOA documents, yellow highlighters, and printed regulations. Her home office looked like the war room of a bureaucratic general preparing for the most critical mission of her life. "They can't just ignore the bylaws," she muttered to herself, tracing her finger along Section 7, Subsection C of the Willow Creek Estates Community Regulations. Her husband, Gerald, had long since given up trying to reason with her, retreating to their soundproof home theater with a glass of 18-year-old scotch. By 5:37 a.m., she had compiled a 27-page document detailing every alleged violation of the Rodriguez pool. The pool fence wasn't exactly 54 inches high. The deck tiles showed microscopic signs of wear. The landscape lighting didn't meet the precise luminosity requirements outlined in Appendix B. Her laptop screen glowed with a freshly drafted email to the HOA board, keying every single board member, past and present. Each paragraph was a meticulously crafted missile of bureaucratic precision, designed to demolish any potential defense the Rodriguez family might mount. At the Willow Creek Community Center, the monthly HOA meeting was about to become anything but routine. Michael Rodriguez sat casually at the end of the conference table, his police chief's badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. Sarah sat beside him, a subtle smile playing at the corners of her mouth. They'd dealt with neighborhood drama before, but Diane Rothschild was a special breed of persistent. "First order of business," announced Harold Jenkins, the HOA board president, a retired accountant with a voice that could put insomniacs to sleep. "We have a formal complaint regarding the Rodriguez property." Diane stood immediately, her beige power suit pressed within an inch of its life. She clicked her remote and a series of photographs appeared on the projection screen. Close-up images of pool tiles, fence measurements, and landscape details filled the room. "As you can clearly see," she began, her voice dripping with manufactured calm, "these violations represent a clear and present danger to our community standards." Michael leaned back, watching her performance with a mixture of amusement and professional curiosity. He'd interrogated hardened criminals who were less intense than Diane Rothschild. Sarah discreetly squeezed his hand under the table. They both knew this was going to be entertaining. "Exhibit A," Diane continued, "shows clear evidence of non-compliance with Section 4.23 of our community bylaws regarding pool infrastructure." She clicked to another slide. Note the 0.03-inch variance in fence height. Harold Jenkins adjusted his glasses, looking slightly bewildered. The other board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. What Diane didn't know was that Michael Rodriguez wasn't just the local police chief. He was also the longest-serving board member, a fact conveniently omitted from her research. And Sarah? She was the community's most respected attorney, with a reputation for dismantling bureaucratic nonsense faster than most people could draft a complaint. The room felt like a pressure cooker, with Diane's righteous indignation providing the heat. Little did she know, her crusade was about to take a turn she could never have anticipated. As she concluded her presentation, Harold cleared his throat. "Thank you, Mrs. Rothschild. The board will review your concerns." Michael's smile was barely concealed. The real game was just beginning, and Diane Rothschild had no idea what was coming. Diane Rothschild wasn't the type to accept defeat. Not now. Not ever. Within 48 hours of the HOA meeting, she had mobilized her network. Martha Henderson from 2 streets over received a meticulously crafted group text. Greg Thompson, the retired city inspector, got a personally written email. By Wednesday, a cover operation was taking shape, a neighborhood surveillance mission targeting the Rodriguez pool. "We'll document everything," Diane told her carefully curated group of like-minded neighbors. They called themselves the Community Standards Protection Committee, though it was essentially just Diane and 3 retirees with too much time on their hands. At precisely 6:15 a.m., they began their first stakeout. Martha brought binoculars. Greg had a laser measurement tool. Patricia Wilson, the oldest member of their group, brought thermos of chamomile tea and homemade blueberry muffins. What they didn't know was that Michael Rodriguez was acutely aware of their presence. "They're at it again," he said to Sarah over breakfast, pointing subtly out the kitchen window. A beige Lexus SUV was strategically parked 2 houses down, its windows slightly tinted. Sarah rolled her eyes. "Want me to handle this legally or professionally?" Michael's laugh was low and dangerous. "Let's see how far they want to take this." The Rodriguez pool wasn't just a pool. It was a meticulously maintained space that had won Community Design Awards 3 years running. Every tile was perfect. Every landscaping element was precisely calculated. Michael and Sarah weren't just homeowners. They were professionals who understood every single regulation better than anyone in Willow Creek Estates. Diane's group didn't realize they were walking into a trap. That afternoon, Michael made a few strategic phone calls. By evening, the local media had caught wind of a potential story about overzealous HOA members harassing a police chief's family. The narrative was about to shift dramatically. Greg's laser measurement revealed nothing substantially wrong. Martha's binoculars captured nothing more than a perfectly maintained backyard. Patricia's notes became increasingly frustrated. "No violations," she muttered, crossing out yet another potential infraction. But Diane wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Her next move would require more than amateur surveillance. She needed hard evidence, something that would force the HOA board to take action against the Rodriguez family. Little did she know, every single one of her moves was being carefully documented, not just by Michael, but by people far more strategic than she could imagine. The neighborhood warfare was about to enter a new phase, and Diane Rothschild was about to learn that in Willow Creek Estates, not everything was as it appeared on the surface. The pool wasn't just a pool, it was a battlefield. And Diane was about to discover she was severely outgunned. Desperation has a particular smell. For Diane Rothschild, it was a cocktail of premium hand sanitizer, legal-sized paper, and mounting frustration. Her latest strategy emerged at 3 a.m., scrawled across a whiteboard in her home office. A complex web of connections linked potential violations, each thread connected by red string like some deranged conspiracy theorist's manifesto. Gerald had long since stopped questioning her late-night planning sessions, preferring the sanctuary of their soundproofed home theater. The upcoming community fundraiser would be her battleground. Every year, Willow Creek Estates hosted a lavish pool party to raise money for local charities. It was an event that brought the entire neighborhood together, and Diane saw it as her perfect opportunity to expose the Rodriguez family's alleged infractions. She volunteered to be on the event planning committee, strategically positioning herself to create maximum disruption. "We'll need a complete safety audit," she announced during the first planning meeting, her voice cutting through side conversations like a freshly sharpened knife, especially considering recent concerns about certain properties. Sarah Rodriguez, seated casually at the end of the conference table, didn't even look up from her laptop. Michael, however, watched Diane with a kind of calm intensity typically reserved for hostage negotiations. The fundraiser would require every pool in the neighborhood to be inspected. Every single one. What Diane didn't know was that Michael had already anticipated her move. His connections ran deeper than she could possibly imagine. The city's building inspector was his college roommate. The county's health and safety coordinator played poker with him every third Thursday. As Diane meticulously planned her inspection ambush, Michael was 3 steps ahead. The day before the fundraiser, an unmarked envelope arrived at Diane's house. Gerald brought it in with the morning mail, dropping it casually on the kitchen counter. Inside were photographs, not of pool violations, not of anything remotely related to HOA regulations. They were surveillance photos of Diane's own property, subtle images revealing minor infractions that would make her current crusade look like a child's playground dispute, a fence post slightly off alignment, landscaping that encroached 2 inches beyond permitted boundaries, outdoor lighting that didn't meet precise community standards. The message was clear: proceed and everyone loses. Diane's hand trembled as she spread the photographs across her kitchen island. For the first time, a seed of doubt began to grow. This wasn't just about a pool anymore. This was about power, about who truly controlled the narrative in Willow Creek Estates. The fundraiser was tomorrow, and Diane Rothschild was about to learn that in this neighborhood, actions have consequences. Very precise consequences. The day of the Willow Creek Estates annual pool party arrived with a tension that could be cut with a butter knife, if said knife were as sharp as Diane Rothschild's resolve. Hundreds of neighborhood residents milled about the community pool, their designer sunglasses and carefully curated casual wear a testament to the area's unspoken social hierarchy. Children splashed in the water. Parents watched. And at the center of it all, Diane moved like a shark, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning every inch of the pool area. Her white linen pantsuit was a beacon of bureaucratic determination. "I'll need to see your current certification," she told the lifeguard, a college student who looked more confused than threatened. "All safety documentation must be filed in triplicate." Michael Rodriguez watched from the sidelines, a drink in hand, looking for all the world like a man completely unconcerned by the brewing storm. Sarah approached him, whispering she's going to blow a gasket in 3, 2, 1. Right on cue, Diane found her first violation. "The pool gate," she announced, her voice cutting through the summer afternoon like a foghorn. "It's exactly 1.5 inches shorter than the regulated height." Her triumphant smile suggested she'd just uncovered the crime of the century. Harold Jenkins, the HOA board president, looked tired. He'd been hoping for a peaceful fundraiser, a chance to raise money for the local children's hospital. Instead, he was witnessing what could only be described as a bureaucratic performance art. But Michael and Sarah had prepared, meticulously. The lifeguard pulled out a folder, perfectly organized, every certification, every inspection document, dated, signed, notarized. Diane's face fell, then rose again with renewed determination. "The deck tiles," she proclaimed, "they're not regulation non-slip material." Another folder appeared, another set of certifications, another dead end. What Diane didn't realize was that each of her accusations was being subtly documented, not by her, but by others. Local news cameras had caught wind of the story. A reporter from the community paper was discreetly taking notes. This wasn't just about a pool anymore. This was becoming a public spectacle. As the afternoon wore on, Diane's crusade became increasingly desperate. She measured, she inspected, she questioned. But at every turn, the Rodriguez family was 1 step ahead. The fundraiser continued, money was raised, children played, and Diane Rothschild found herself becoming something of a neighborhood joke. But jokes in the hands of someone like Diane could quickly turn into something more dangerous. The day was far from over, and Diane was far from finished. Humiliation is a powerful motivator, and Diane Rothschild was a woman intimately familiar with the taste of public defeat. The days following the fundraiser saw her transformation from a mere HOA enthusiast to something far more calculated. Her home office became a war room. Bulletin boards covered in photographs, documents, and connected threads told a story of obsession that would make any conspiracy theorist proud. Gerald watched his wife with a mixture of concern and resignation. He'd long ago learned that challenging Diane was like trying to stop a tsunami with a beach umbrella. "I'll expose them," Diane muttered, sorting through a stack of documents at 2 a.m. "I'll find something. Anything." Her opportunity came from an unexpected source. A minor construction permit caught her eye. The Rodriguez family was planning a small addition to their backyard, a pergola that would require specific zoning approvals. Diane knew every single regulation backward and forward. This was her moment. She filed a formal complaint with the city building department. Not just a simple report, a 47-page document detailing potential violations, complete with annotated photographs, historical property records, and a comprehensive analysis of every conceivable building code. What she didn't know was that Sarah Rodriguez wasn't just a lawyer. She was the city's most respected municipal law expert, with connections that ran deeper than Diane could possibly imagine. The building department's response was swift, but not in the way Diane expected. A formal investigation was launched, not into the Rodriguez property, but into Diane's repeated filing of frivolous complaints, Each report was meticulously examined, each accusation scrutinized. Michael, meanwhile, played a longer game. He began quietly reaching out to neighbors, not with threats, but with a simple question. How many times has Diane's crusade interrupted your life? The stories began to compile. The pool party incident, the repeated inspections, the constant drama. The neighborhood was changing, and not in the way Diane had planned. At the next HOA meeting, something felt different. Looks were exchanged. Whispers became conversations. Diane's once captive audience was slipping away. Harold Jenkins cleared his throat. "We have a matter to discuss," he announced, his voice carrying a weight it had never held before. Diane sat up straight, clipboard clutched to her chest. She'd rehearsed for this moment, prepared every possible argument, documented every potential scenario. But some preparations can't account for everything. The room fell silent. The fluorescent lights seemed to dim. And in that moment, Diane Rothschild realized her carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down. This was more than a battle over a pool. This was about power, community, and the very fabric of suburban life in Willow Creek Estates. And nothing would ever be the same again. The HOA meeting room felt like a courtroom. Tension crackled through the air like static electricity, and Diane Rothschild knew something fundamental had changed. Gone were the supportive glances from her fellow committee members. Gone was the deference she'd grown accustomed to. Instead, a cold silence greeted her as she walked in, clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield. Harold Jenkins opened the meeting with unprecedented formality. "Mrs. Rothschild," he began, "the board has completed a comprehensive review of your recent actions." A manila folder lay on the table. Diane recognized the city seal immediately. Her heart rate spiked. Sarah Rodriguez sat at the far end of the table, her expression unreadable. Michael was conspicuously absent, a strategic move that made Diane even more nervous. "We've documented a pattern of harassment," Harold continued, his voice measured. 15 separate complaints filed against the Rodriguez family in the past 2 months, each one thoroughly investigated and found to be without merit. Diane opened her mouth to speak, but Harold raised a hand. The gesture was definitive, final. "Your actions have cost the HOA significant administrative time and resources," he said. "Moreover, your repeated false reports to city departments constitute a form of municipal harassment." The room felt like it was closing in. Diane's carefully pressed white pantsuit suddenly felt suffocating. But Harold wasn't finished. "The board has reviewed video evidence from the recent fundraiser. Your behavior was not only unprofessional but potentially damaging to our community's reputation." He slid a USB drive across the table. "We have a complete recording." What Diane didn't know was that Michael's connections ran deeper than she could have imagined. The local news station, initially interested in a potential story, had instead become a silent witness to her escalating obsession. "You have 2 choices," Harold said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Resign from all HOA committees and accept a 2-year probation, or face a formal hearing that will become a matter of public record." The silence was deafening. Diane's mind raced. This wasn't just about the pool anymore. This was about her entire social standing in Willow Creek Estates, everything she built, everything she fought for. Her hand trembled as she reached for the USB drive. The recordings would expose everything, her tactics, her obsession, the increasingly desperate measures she'd taken to prove a point that no longer made sense, if it ever had. In that moment, Diane Rothschild understood a fundamental truth about power. It's not about how loudly you can speak, but about how effectively you can listen. The Rodriguez family hadn't defeated her. She had defeated herself. Outside the meeting room, the summer sun beat down on the perfectly manicured lawns of Willow Creek Estates. But inside, a world was crumbling, one bureaucratic missile at a time. Diane Rothschild's once immaculate house stood silent. The perfectly trimmed hedges remained untouched. Gerald had taken an extended business trip, leaving behind a home that felt more like a mausoleum than a residence. The HOA fundraiser had become legendary, not for Diane's dramatic confrontation, but for the record amount of money raised for the children's hospital. The Rodriguez pool, now a symbol of neighborhood unity, had become the centerpiece of community gatherings. Sarah found Michael in their backyard, adjusting the varied pool fence that had once been the source of such controversy. "She's moving," Sarah said, handing him a cold beer. Michael raised an eyebrow. "Voluntarily?" A slight smile crossed Sarah's lips. Let's just say she was given an opportunity to start fresh somewhere else. The real estate agent was very persuasive. The truth was far more complex. The combination of municipal investigations, HOA sanctions, and subtle community pressure had effectively marginalized Diane. Not through aggressive action, but through a masterful display of collective indifference. Harold Jenkins had managed the situation with a precision that would have impressed a military strategist. No public shaming, No dramatic confrontations, just a systematic dismantling of Diane's social and bureaucratic influence. In the distance, children laughed. The neighborhood pool sparkled under the late summer sun. Diane's clipboard, her weapon of choice, sat in a cardboard box marked for donation. Her meticulously maintained HOA documentation files were being shredded page by careful page. "What do you think she'll do?" Michael asked, taking a swig of his beer. Sarah's response was measured. "Start over. Somewhere else. Some people need to feel in control more than they need to be happy." The Rodriguez backyard felt different now. Not just a battleground, but a testament to something more profound. Community wasn't about perfect regulations or microscopic measurements. It was about understanding, compromise, humanity. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the perfectly maintained lawn, one thing became clear. In Willow Creek Estates, balance had been restored. For now, a single hedge trimmer lay forgotten near the pool fence, a silent reminder that some battles are won not with loud declarations, but with quiet persistence. The neighborhood held its breath and waited.